Hey, if you're with us on Facebook right now, I know it's a black screen, but you might be able to hear my voice here. I think you are. I just want to let you know what is about to happen. At 2 p.m., we are expecting Greensboro police to address last night's demonstrations. This as people have been trying to clean up downtown all morning long. That right there is the police department downtown. You can see in the reflection a whole lot of media cameras there because there's a lot of attention today about what will be said by the police department in response to the demonstrations last night. Again, we are expecting that to happen at 2 p.m. We have a crew down there right now. Alma McCarty is on the scene. She's going to be asking some of your questions that you have sent in to us overnight. If you have more questions you want to know about, please leave them in the comments below. We would love to hear your thoughts and pass that on to police to get answers for you. Okay, you can see right now they are bringing out a podium, getting ready for this to start. Again, we're expecting them to make an address to the public around 2 p.m. today. This is Greensboro Police Department, and they will be talking about last night's demonstrations and the plan for tonight if there are any further demonstrations. Right now, we have not been told if there will be more demonstrations in Greensboro. There's a couple of people on social media saying that they plan on being out there, but it's just a couple right now. There is no widespread movement at the moment. We also are taking your questions to ask police while we are there. Alma McCarty is there. I hear that a couple of you already in our comments have some questions. Debbie, you were asking, are there any plans to protest in High Point on South Main Street? We do know that the Walmart in High Point has closed as a precaution in case there are demonstrations there tonight. We do not know how many people plan to show up, how serious this demonstration will be. We are monitoring the situation on social media for you, Debbie, and we will let you know as soon as we know more. Amy, you asked, is it accurate that someone set fire to the courthouse last night? Yes, it is. As soon as we got off our Facebook Live around, I think it was 1:30 or 2 last night, someone did set a small fire in the lower level of the courthouse down in Greensboro. Firefighters were able to quickly put that out, but it did burn for a little bit and spread quite a lot across that lower level. We do not know the extent of the damage yet. We're hoping to try to get in there today and learn more. Also, we do know that law enforcement is looking for the person who set that fire. Okay, guys, if you're just joining us on Facebook, what you are seeing right now is a podium being set up for a news conference by Greensboro Police Department today. I also see Mayor Nancy Vaughn in there, as well as some of our city council members. It looks like the city is coming together to address the demonstrations from last night. Alma McCarty is live on scene there. We're going to have her ask some of your questions that you're interested in knowing. What do you want to know from these people on those steps right there? Leave it in the comments below and I'll pass it on to Alma. Okay, and if you're just joining us too, we are still getting more questions about High Point protests. Mandy, we are hearing that there might be something going on in High Point right now. We have crews that are going to head out there to check it out. What we do know is that the Walmart on South Main in High Point has closed as a precaution for today. That is not to say that there were actually protesters there yet. We do also know that on social media, some people are saying they plan to go out and protest in High Point today, but we do not know how large that demonstration will be. started. So we'll have first up, Chief, please.
These are 750 US dollars.
And if it was leather,
Probably be over 1,000.
Right now, we want to take you some breaking news in Greensboro, where Greensboro police are responding to last night's demonstrations. Let's listen in.
Here with us, including the Sheriff of Guilford County, Danny Rogers. Before I say anything, I first would like to allow the mayor of our city, Mayor Nancy Vaughn, to have a few words.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for coming out this afternoon. As the chief said, the last 24 hours have been awfully stressful in our city. You know, the protest started around noon yesterday, and I have to say for most of the day they went off without a hitch. We think it's important that people are allowed to protest and say what's on their mind. We've seen an awful lot of events over the last few months that really are very, very concerning. The death of George Floyd was the last of them. And I want to say that I too feel that Black Lives Matter, and people have to be able to say that and to be out in our community. And it's very important to hear those words. But there were people in those groups yesterday that came to our community to start trouble. And that happened at the end of those events yesterday. At the end of what was for most of the day a peaceful event, as it was breaking up, there were people who decided to act irresponsibly, and they started breaking windows out on South Elm Street. And as that was happening, I heard some of the protesters to say, "Stop that. That's not what we are here for." And I think that is important to say. I walked along Elm Street today and spoke to many of the business owners. It was really gratifying to see all the volunteers that came out, brought wood to help them board up their windows. Many of the business owners have decided to board up all of their windows because they don't know what will happen over the next couple of days. That a lot of the restaurants brought out food for the volunteers. People came to help sweep up. The business owners are grateful for the volunteers and that they are dedicated to rebuild. And we as a city and downtown Greensboro, and County Commissioner Skip Alston was there, and he was there to offer his support. We're going to rebuild downtown, especially South Elm. We are not going to let a few interlopers take apart what we have spent a long time building. We are Greensboro strong, and we are a community, and we are going to move forward. And I also want to say I'm very proud of the way that our police force reacted yesterday. They have done a tremendous job, and we are a great community. And while we had a very difficult couple of hours, we are not going to be defined by those hours. Greensboro is a great place to live and do business, and we are going to move beyond that. So that is my message today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we'll have Sheriff Rogers from the Guilford County Sheriff's Office.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Danny H. Rogers with Guilford County Sheriff's Office. The last couple of weeks has really been tough. But I'm here to tell you that we're here to make sure, as a law enforcement organization, working alongside with our Greensboro partners, Greensboro Police Department and High Point Police Department, we will do our jobs and do the best that we can to make sure that everybody understands that we're not here to bring any type of strife. We're here to make sure that everybody is treated fairly and everything works right. Last night was really, it was different for me to see how people wanting to tear up stuff. We know you used to seeing it on television, but when it's in your own county, then it was a different story for me. So we just want the community to know that we, as a law enforcement organization with the Sheriff's Office, I believe I can speak on behalf of the Greensboro Police Department as well, and High Point Police Department, we will continue to be transparent. We will make sure that anything that needs to be done to ensure that the safety of our citizens, our residents, the officers, we will make sure that everybody understands that we will be transparent and do the job that we need to get done. Anything that violates those constitutional rights of any human being, residents, citizens of Guilford County, anybody that disrespects any residents or citizens of Guilford County from the Sheriff's Office and fail to be professional, we will not tolerate it. We are here to ensure that everybody is here to enjoy Guilford County, Greensboro, and High Point and the surrounding areas. The people that came into our county yesterday and last night and brought the destruction with them, we will not tolerate that. We'd like to make sure that everybody understands that our goal is to make sure that we're all on one accord. But the outsiders that came in and those that are local that may have participated with the outsiders to bring havoc and bring destruction to our city, to our county, we will not have it. We need your help. We need your love as well. But we need to make sure that we understand. Things do happen. Unfortunately, we're here at a place because of some things that went wrong. But our goal is to make sure that we here in Guilford County can be accountable, transparent, and make sure that you as the citizens and residents of Guilford County understand that we're here for you. I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff. And just starting out, and I'm going to reiterate a few things that the mayor said. So between 11 and 12 yesterday, we received our first group of protesters downtown in the area of the Civil Rights Museum. And let me say that on Friday, I was asked about the possibility of a protest here in Greensboro. And I said, I hope that the protest is peaceful and meaningful. And let me say that a majority of the protest yesterday was peaceful and meaningful. A number of our local activists and organizers were in contact with us yesterday, working in cooperation to make sure that people had an opportunity to express their First Amendment rights peacefully. That happened for a majority of the day. A number of people came to the community that do not live here. Things still remain peaceful for a good bit of time throughout the day. As you know, at one point, Gate City Boulevard was blocked because a number of the protesters went out onto Gate City Boulevard. We made a decision as an agency not to engage the protesters at any point and shut the road down to give them an opportunity to protest and walk down Gate City. The protesters did enter onto Interstate 40. That was not expected. However, we were able to manage it, and we did have a lot of help. Sheriff Rogers and the Guilford County Sheriff's Office assisted us, as well as the State Highway Patrol, Troop D here in Guilford County, and also the High Point Police Department. We were able to shut down Interstate 40. No one was injured. After the protesters stayed on Interstate 40 for a good while, we were able to procure a GTA bus through Assistant City Manager Kim Sowell, thanks to her, for getting a GTA bus out there to get a majority of the protesters back to the downtown area. A majority of those protesters that were on the bridge on I-40, which many of you saw, left the area once they were back into the downtown area. By then, a number of other waves of protesters or groups of protesters had actually come downtown, and we were literally in the process of monitoring two separate protests at one point along Elm Street. Last night, later into the night, officers on Elm Street near the intersection of MLK where the railroad tracks are, started to take rocks and other objects being thrown at them from that position. At that point, we did deploy pepper spray to try to regain control of that particular area. At that point, we did deploy a number of officers to the area to try to maintain control. And as you've heard and as you've seen, a number of businesses were broken into and vandalized along the South Elm Street corridor. What I would say is this: the Greensboro Police Department, we respect and support the ability of any citizen to exercise their First Amendment right. And I think that we displayed that yesterday. This has been a really tumultuous week for a number of us. And I know that you've seen an example, and maybe the worst example, of what a law enforcement officer can do. But what I will say is this, is that yesterday I saw the best in law enforcement. I saw patience, I saw tolerance, and I saw cooperation with our citizens in an effort to provide a peaceful environment for people to exercise their First Amendment rights. Unfortunately, that was disrupted by people that wanted to destroy and disrupt. That's not productive. That doesn't honor the memory of George Floyd. That doesn't make us better. That doesn't get us to move past this point and build upon it. It simply doesn't. The epicenter of civil rights, one of them in this country, is right here in Greensboro, the Civil Rights Museum. There have been a number of stories around about who broke the glass at the Civil Rights Museum. We don't know who broke it at this point. We're investigating a lot of different things. But the fact is, really, a beacon of light was damaged last night. It'll be repaired and we'll move on, and it'll still be that same beacon of light. But my point is this: that was not productive to damage that symbol in our community. Neither was it productive to damage a number of the businesses that employ people right here in this community, a number of small businesses, a number of businesses that are locally owned, that have endured a crisis already because of the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic that we've endured. It didn't help the community. So I think at this point we have to think about, what can we do different? What can we do about people that come from outside of our community, and instead of promoting peace and the First Amendment, promote destruction? We got to think about how we handle that next time. So at this point, the work begins. We have to figure out what we do. What conversations do we have? What actions do we take? We're not sure what's going to happen over the next few days. We're still trying to figure that out. There are a number of protests going on throughout the state and the country. We don't know if protests are coming back to Greensboro at this point. We're still working on that. But what I will say is this: whatever comes back to Greensboro, we will respond appropriately. We will be respectful. We will protect your First Amendment right and your safety. If anyone has any questions at this point, I would be glad to take any. I think the mayor or the sheriff, if they'd be open to any questions if they come up as well. So at this point, does anyone have any questions? Let me say one more thing. I'm sorry, just one more thing. I did mention that the officers did take some incoming rocks and some other objects. Some of the officers were hit. We did have some damage to some police vehicles, but we did not have any injuries. We also did not have any injuries reported from the protesters. And yesterday we only made one arrest, which was very early in the day, and that arrest was a counter-protester along the Elm Street corridor very early that was actually trying to disrupt the peaceful protest. That is the only arrest we made yesterday. So at this point, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Do you have a number of dollars that the damages extend to?
We're trying to compile that now. Some of the businesses were simply vandalized, and then some of the businesses were actually looted, to use that term. Things were stolen from the business. We're in the process now of trying to do all the reports. Let me also say that we had a number of businesses throughout the city that were broken into and that were affected, and we're trying to figure out what that cumulative damage is. But at this point, we're just still trying to determine the total loss and what it'll cost to rebuild.
In the middle of the turmoil, it would be very difficult, but will you be pursuing those actions, the broken glass, the broken windows on the police cars?
Yeah, so we have a lot of video that is available to us. We will take the time to sit down and study that video to determine the identity of anyone that committed a criminal act. And if we can pursue charges on those people, we will certainly pursue charges. What I will say is that a number of the people that were causing the destruction were not from this community. But we will do our best to identify those folks and bring the appropriate charges.
How do you know they weren't part of the case?
We, just from intel that we have, we do have a number of officers here that quite frankly stay in touch with our local activists, our local organizers that organize protests, and we've had conversations with them, and they have told us that these people were not from our community, and that and to let us know that they had nothing to do with the destruction that happened last night.
Chief, what do you know about the Lawndale incident, sir? The mattress firm on Lawndale. What do you know about that incident?
The only thing I know now is that there was a fire at that location. I really can't give you any other details at this point, but they did suffer fire damage, as well as the courthouse also suffered some fire damage last night.
What did the demonstrators' permit allow them to do yesterday?
So I've heard the permit. To my knowledge, there was no permit given. They simply demonstrated, they organized. What we did downtown during the times that, of course, like I said, most of it was peaceful, we simply blocked off roads to give them space to protest and exercise their First Amendment right. So there were no permits that were actually issued to anyone yesterday.
Chief, do you have any knowledge of the outside political affiliations, the outside groups that came in? Were they affiliated with any particular political?
I do not. I have no idea their political affiliations.
Right wing, left wing?
I simply can't say that at this point. Yes, sir.
We heard yesterday, I wasn't out there, but that an SUV kind of plowed through part of the crowd. Were there any injuries from that? And do you know anything more about what happened?
So I've seen a brief video. We have not identified the driver of that SUV. We did not have any injuries reported from that. We are following up on that, as we are a number of different things. Just at first glance, and at first glance only, it looked like the vehicle was trying to get out of the area. I don't know that. We are investigating. So if we can determine who was driving the vehicle and maybe follow up with some additional questions, we can determine exactly what happened with that. But no injuries reported.
How's the morale of the men and women who were there last night and their colleagues?
I think morale is good. What I'll say is that we certainly are all, physically tired, but I think that the patience and the tolerance that we showed yesterday, I think that it speaks to the best of law enforcement, and it shows what we're supposed to be about and what we are about in Greensboro and what we strive to be. So I'd say morale is good. We know we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We're trying to figure out what the next few days look like. We're all going to be working some longer hours possibly, and we're preparing for that. Yes, sir.
Chief James, are you going to do anything based on what has happened previously? Are you going to do anything differently tonight going forward?
So what we do anytime we have any kind of protest, rally, major incident, we do an after-action review. So at this point, we are looking at everything we did yesterday and trying to determine what we can do differently. What I will say is that I won't get specifically into tactics, but I do think that there are some things that we could certainly look at that we could do differently that may have produced a better outcome. When you're going through these things, and let me say that in my number of years, in my 24 plus years at the Greensboro Police Department, we've had protests. Those protests have been peaceful. I've never seen one that has really, quite frankly, gone this destructive or gone for this span of time, over essentially more than probably a 14-hour time period. So we had a lot of unknowns yesterday, and quite frankly, we learned a lot from it. And I would say that, yes, we will do our best if we have a similar incident to handle it better, and that's what we do. So we had approximately 80 Greensboro police officers that were on duty yesterday at various points just for the protest. That doesn't count the regular duty officers that were working yesterday. We also, again, we had a number of officers from High Point, a number of officers from the Guilford County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Highway Patrol. So there were definitely more than 100 officers total, but about 80 GPD officers specifically assigned to the protest. Yes, sir.
If there are future protest plans, will the GPD follow similar conduct, or will your tactics be changing going forward?
It really depends. And what I'll say is, you know, we certainly hope we don't have a repeat of the behavior that was displayed in the latter half of the events yesterday. But our tactics, you know, of course, when we look at, you know, crowd management, our tactics are pretty stable. I think that for the most part they worked. What I would say is this, when we had the number of people that were up around the Elm and MLK area in that corridor, a lot of things were questioned about the destruction that happened at that point. For us to literally go in and try to arrest people who were actively engaged in destroying property, we would have had to go through the crowd, which would have broke our formation and probably put officers as well as citizens in greater danger. So, of course, we would never value, you know, personal injury or life over property, and we just had to make that decision. So those tactics, quite frankly, they're fluid. We have to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis. Yes, sir.
Has the George Floyd incident caused you to look at the Greensboro Police Department and see if changes need to be made, or just examine the health of the Greensboro Police Department?
I think the George Floyd incident should cause every law enforcement agency across the nation to look at their tactics and also look at their relationships with their community. I think that that's very important. I don't know how you could look at this particular incident and not be self-reflective in some way. And what I'll say is that this incident actually goes beyond law enforcement. We all should look at ourselves reflectively and think about what we're doing in our particular communities to build relationships and promote understanding.
All right, guys. So thank you guys for coming out. That's all the questions we're going to take. We appreciate it. Have a good day. Please.
Thank you very much.
So the message from Chief Brian James there and our city leaders is that it was a mostly peaceful protest until a group of people from outside Greensboro came and caused some damage. We will have continuing coverage of the demonstrations today, both on air and online. Stay with us on WFMYnews2.com.